Welcome to another episode of Alberta Stories. I'm your host, Todd Strickland. I have 2 daughters, and guiding them is one of my main priorities and passions in life. I'm concerned about what the school systems are going to teach my girls. Our history books have kept us in the dark about the racist institutional policies and practices of our past. We can all look around and see the economic inequalities that exist between white people and black and brown. Today, white families have nearly 10 times the net worth of black families, according to the Federal Reserve. Why is that? What didn't I learn that's kept most of us ignorant to our racist past? The story that we're about to hear is that of Marnella Mosley. She helps us better understand the practice of redlining and its effects on her neighborhood. Marnella's childhood was filled with many fond memories, but the glaring discriminatory practices enacted by the U.S. government systematically prevented black Americans from accumulating wealth through property ownership. Take a listen as current PDX resident and proud black business owner Cole Reed narrates Marnella's story.
Hello, my name is Cole Reed, and I'm reading the story of Marnella Mosley. You know, being a transplant, it's the fact that I keep hearing the same story. And the stories of old are the stories of new, because I think Portland has a history of repeating itself when it comes to racial bias. I was like, how can you invest in your community to make it your own? Because even though I wasn't raised here, I understand the story. So these stories are a fabric of my existence as well, even though the location is different. And being a huge lover of not just people, but especially people who look like me. You can't change history, but we can change the future by taking a closer look and an honest look at the history. So for me, reading the story, I'm honored. Even as a child, Marnella Mosley remembers getting subtle lessons on the importance of black businesses to her Alberta street community. Every day, walking home, she would pass by a variety of businesses owned by people of color. But her favorite was Franklin's Market, owned by Elder Franklin. She remembers how he would buy the neighborhood children's favorite candy to give them an early stake in preserving the business. Mosley also remembers when that same corner store changed ownership and became what many now know as Jack's Chicken. Likewise, she remembers her neighbor Floyd Booker's dreams of buying the building across the street, the Texan, and how the banks refused to give him a loan.
And I'm watching Mr. Booker, Mr. Booker, who I've known since I was a sophomore in high school, know that he had a dream and he could not make it happen for him. So what he had to do is he went out and he built a business so that his sons would have a place to work, that no one could say, you can't take care of his sons. And his son runs this because Mr. Booker laid that foundation. And it's no different than any other family of any color line or anything. They want the best for their children.
Now, Mosley works for Booker's Sons as an office manager for Courtesy Janitorial Services, Inc., one of the few black businesses on Alberta Street. One of those sons, Ronald Booker, says they are often approached with 6-figure offers for the property. But those large sums don't measure its real value. After all, he remembers all too vividly the struggles his father went through and the sacrifices others made just to help him build it. Most notably, when the Bookers moved to the Alberta neighborhood in 1976, a plumber named Ed Mitchell rented out a place to them for only $58 a month.
And he said, the reason the rent is so low is I don't want you to fail. So this was an Afro-American who reached back.
Even with that support, when it came time to get a loan, Floyd had to convince a white man who he'd never saw again after that day to go into the bank and impersonate him. It worked. For Ronald, it was just one of those pieces of evidence that he was part of a system that wasn't designed for him. Long before his father was his business role model, he was Ronald's first black history teacher. These lessons would include Floyd's stories from serving in World War II, where black soldiers weren't allowed to eat until after not just their fellow white soldiers, but also the Nazi prisoners. Growing up, Ronald was very aware of Oregon's history as the only state in the U.S. to pass laws excluding blacks from living in the state starting in 1844. Likewise, he was also aware of the fact that in the 1920s, the state had the highest concentration of the Ku Klux Klan members west of the Mississippi. During his early years, working for his father, he learned lessons like the importance of parking his Lincoln Continental 2 blocks away from the auto shop. That way, white people wouldn't know how well his father's business was doing and come after them. Now, those lessons require him to resist the lucrative offers being thrown at his property in favor of focusing on the bigger picture. On one hand, it seems easy to him when he sees how some businesses that chose to stay reaped the benefits.
Safeway was going to pull out at one time. The community rose up, told them to stay. Now they're glad they stayed because the neighborhood's changed now. So they're reaping the benefit of their estate. Because you go in Safeways now, there's more people that don't look like you than it used to be.
Ronald also understands how someone like Mosley recently found herself in a position where she sold her childhood home. Her father originally bought the home on Grand in Alberta for $17,500. After her father passed away in 2014 and the home stayed vacant for a year, she chose to sell for nearly $400,000. Unlike most, she was, however, able to stay in the neighborhood. Now she lives a few blocks away from her father's home in a building owned by Ronald. While the neighborhood has changed dramatically, the lesson she learned from Elder Franklin still holds true. Intentionality matters, and if black people don't take care of each other, who will?
You didn't ask whether they owned their house or were renting their house, but you know that was Miss Blythe's house or Ronnie's house, or you knew, so there was safety in just not. But now you
knew the players.
You see the house that so and so lived in, and it looks different. It's just different. Even in my neighborhood, which I've been living there since '67, and I only live 3 houses away from where my father was living. I don't know those people. But we know if we move out, we don't get to come back.
No, you're done.
Yeah, you.
This podcast has been brought to you by Diversa in partnership with Alberta Main Street, X-Ray FM, and the Numbers.fm. Diversa creates new worlds to bring forth a larger truth. For more information, go to diversaedu.com.